I used to live in an apartment complex just right here in Eden Prairie. And this was the first place I was finally able to settle down and call home for more than just a few months at a time. That up until that point in my life, I'd been buffeted. I'd buffeted around from place to place, from Wisconsin as a kid, then to Iowa, then to Minnesota, and then back to Iowa, and then back here to Minnesota. I mean, it had been a whirlwind of a journey. But this place here in town was the first place I knew I'd stick around for at least a couple of years before being sent by the winds of the Spirit yet again back to Wisconsin. But it was in this apartment in town that I would often sit and wonder what the future would hold. Where would God take me next? What did God have in mind for my future? I mean, I had my own perfectly scripted plans for the future, but I really wasn't sure if God had read my notes or if God would take those notes or opinions into account. I mean, I had a lot of questions back then about faith and life, and I still do. To be honest, I never run out of questions for God, and to be clear, that's not only okay, but it's good. And let's see what the author of James has to say about it, though, in our text for today is from James chapter 1, verses 5 and 6. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. Now, we talked a little bit last week about doubt and faith and how I really don't think that those are opposing forces. And I think the same is true for asking questions. See, back during my first year of seminary, I thought I had all my theological ideas wrapped up, kind of in a nice present with a bow right on top. That all the major problems were solved and it didn't really seem like I had any lingering questions. But then I started hearing viewpoints and interpretations from professors and students that I'd never thought of before. They were beautiful and raw views on faith and life that I'd never even dreamed to think about. And so their thoughts brought up questions in my mind that made me crave diving deeper into the pages of the Bible and had me reading books from authors who pushed me and challenged me in new ways of thinking about God and life and theology I'd never thought of before. And so the more questions I asked, of course, the more questions then popped up. And so continued my journey of always asking questions and sometimes finding answers, but more or less just continually ending up with more and more questions. But I find the more questions I ask, the deeper into relationship I enter with God. Now, asking a myriad of questions to God can feel like you're being blown and tossed by the wind like a wave of the sea. That quote unquote stability seems like it may come from a place of not asking questions, but I would argue that asking questions simply reveals that, hey, we don't know everything. That we don't have all the answers, that we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, that we don't know what the path ahead holds for us. And so, of course, we ask God those questions and we also ask for answers. We usually don't get them in the way we want, but we ask nonetheless. I mean, my daughter is constantly asking, why? Why is her dinner hot? Why can't she eat it with her hands? Why can't she give it to the dogs? Why can't she eat dessert first? See, there's this burning curiosity within her, and it brings her into dialogue with her parents. It's a back and forth that shows there's space for honest and raw conversation. And see, that's the relationship that Jesus has with you. It's real, it's authentic, it's honest. So bring your questions to Jesus, both big and small, because Jesus can handle them, because we don't have all the answers. And so it's time we start asking the questions.